Red Temple Spirits here on WNYU from If I Were Leaving for Lhasa Tomorrow, I Wouldn't Stay a Minute More, Soft Machine. Also the Sundays, right from Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic, A Certain Someone. And starting us off was the Ronchans from Live at the Continental Divide, Detox Moon. And William from Red Temple Spirits is here in the studio with us. And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
That's cool. And you were here not too long ago, I guess starting like about October.
Yes, we did a show at the CMJ thing.
Mm-hmm. I know by now you've released, the latest album, which, well, do you want to tell us the derivation? Maybe is there a derivation to the title or something? Because it's just unusually long, I guess.
Well, I've always liked long titles for albums,
Mm-hmm.
but basically any opportunity I can get to mention anything to do with Tibet in any way whatsoever, I will. So that was part of the thing. I've always had a dream of going to Lhasa, being the capital of Tibet,
Mm-hmm.
when it's free.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there under the Chinese occupation, but so that's pretty much where the album title came from.
Okay, so let's get back. There's more to talk about with Tibet, but why don't we get back to that in a
Okay.
few minutes? Because first I wanted to find out a little about the album, because the last album seemed a little more. I would say that this album seems almost more musically focused, and it seems like just in album titles also it seems a little different. Whereas the last record's album titles included words like light, sun, moonlight, and this one seems to have more like city, machine, meltdown.
That's very astute of you to pick up on that. Yes, when we wrote the material for the album, pretty much everyone in the band was going through very heavy times, and I think that's been reflected very strongly in the album. It was originally going to be called the Dark Album because it just felt that everything was so dark,
Mm-hmm.
but we changed it at the last minute.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was just like, yeah, you
Yeah.
certainly did change it.
Uh,
I was
uh,
wondering, if there was some sort of change in, not really philosophy, but outlook, I guess.
there's not really a change, but sometimes things seem more hopeless than at other times. I think now we're going through a period where we feel really optimistic about things again, and our next release should be a lot more cheerful, not sappy, but a lot more uplifting.
Uh-huh. So, would you say that pessimism maybe of this album reflects, is it more of a personal thing, or does it reflect what was going on
I
in the world at
I
the time?
think it
or-
reflects what's going on in the world, and it was also a very personal thing.
Mhm.
But the album's, I don't want to give the impression that the album's totally dark and heavy. It isn't. There are sort of light things on it and reasons to celebrate. Um,
Mhm.
but the overall thing was pretty dark, and it wasn't just me going through it. It was everyone
Mhm.
in the band was pretty, bad relationships, money trap, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, our mics are fritzing on us. Okay, looks like they're back to normal now. Wasn't sure if we were broadcasting for a second there. I guess we can go back to Tibet now, because I know that you guys were talking about a benefit single that you were going to put out for that.
That's right. Well, we have, since I last spoke to you, we have indeed put out a benefit single on the Nate Startman. No, actually, sorry, it's not the Nate Startman. That's our general label.
Uh-huh.
This was a one-off thing on the Independent Project Records label. It's a song called New Land, and it's a limited edition of 1,200. And $1 from the sale of each records will go to Tibet House, which is one of our favourite charities. Isn't really the right word. It's one of our favourite organisation. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to explain a little bit?
Well, Tibet House was basically started by Richard Gere under the auspices of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to preserve Tibetan culture, which has been systematically destroyed by the communist Chinese government in Tibet. 3,000 temples of monasteries have been totally demolished. Irretrievable knowledge has just been lost. The medical records dating back thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Priceless artifacts have just been smashed and used for paving stones.
Wow.
The culture's pretty much systematically being completely destroyed. And Tibet House is dedicated to preserving the culture by hosting the Yuto monks tour, who toured here last year,
Mm-hmm.
various Tibetan dance teams have been out here, hosted by Tibet House. They also um, accommodate Tibetan dignitaries when they come here. They put on art shows and generally try and keep the word about Tibet alive, because when there's uprising in Tibet, it's in all the newspapers, and then no one knows anything about what's going on. So basically, it's to keep Tibet in the mind of people and to preserve the culture, and that's something we feel very strongly about.
It's something you guys have a personal interest in, or
Yes, I've always had a very deep affinity to Tibet, even as a very young child, and
yeah, how did you get into that?
it's hard for me to say. I remember when I was very, very small, I saw a picture of a monastery, and it made me feel really strange. I got shivers all down me. I wanted to know more about it. When I first saw a Buddha, I never knew anything about Buddha or what it was, but I wanted one. It was just like something I really had to have. And I've just always felt a close affinity with it. So that's pretty much where that comes from.
Do you have you maybe increased hope that things will
I th-
improve there, just because of what's going on in Eastern Europe? I know that
Yes,
it's not
yes.
really connected.
Well, everything's connected in a way. I do have hope that things will get better there, but at the same time, when we saw what happened in Tiananmen Square, where
Yeah.
they're killing their own people, and you have to understand that the Tibetans are considered by the Chinese to be culturally and racially inferior, and if they're just going to kill their own people for protesting, what hope have the Tibetans got? But uh, through world opinion and constant pressure, hopefully things will in time change, and that's one of the reasons we keep, reminding people about what's going on in Tibet, to keep it alive.
You mentioned, that everything is connected, and that's something that sort of seems to appear on the records in a way. It's kind of like a very spiritual thing. How would you describe what you're trying to put across, say, on the records?
I think it's hard to sum it up in a few minutes, but basically, what the band's trying to do. It started off. We wanted to be spiritually uplifting to ourselves. We wanted to do music that transcended everyday reality. Very much like the dervish dancers or dervish singers, they through their art, be it dance, music, whatever, they reach a more of a state of upful bliss, is probably the best way of putting it, and that's what we try and do with our music, whilst acknowledging all the things that are going on in the world, like Tibet. We don't want to get so morose that it's just like, oh my God, everything's awful. What, let's kill ourselves. There's nothing to do. Let's be really negative. All those things are going on and they're affecting us all, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I'm sure, and we try and reflect that in our music. I think the 90s are, a really positive, exciting decade to live in, and I'm really convinced that we will see a lot more awareness of the spiritual side of life.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of bands, I think what a lot of bands do is they go into escapism rather than the direction that you've taken, and it's just kind of
Yes, well,
interesting.
yeah, our music isn't really escapism. We draw. All the lyrics are pretty much derived from real life situations and Tibetan philosophy, strangely enough, and also Native American philosophy, the awareness of the Earth Mother, and in fact American Indian philosophy is very similar to Tibetan philosophy, and we kind of weld the two together. Not that the music sounds either Tibetan nor American Indian, but that's where a lot of the philosophy is derived from.
Let's get on to the show that you're doing. I guess it's tonight, right?
That's right. Yes,
At
we're playing
Woody's,
at Woody's.
which is Ron Wood's new club, for those of you who don't know yet. And how long have you guys been on tour so far for this record?
Actually, only a week.
Only a week?
Yes,
I was going to ask you how it's going.
Oh, it's going really well. We've been playing to a really enthusiastic audience. We did a great show at Ground Zero, hosted by Apocalyptic Resurrection, that was just phenomenal. It was really great. We played up in Vermont, traveling in the snow. It was like a really crazy drive to get there. It was freezing cold. We didn't think anyone would come. People were wild. They were just like
Really?
slam dancing, climbing up the scaffolding, the light towers, and it was just like crazy. And yesterday we played in Rochester, and again through really bad weather, you know, foot thick snow. But everybody there really liked us a lot too. So things are going pretty well so far. We're actually surprised that we're as known as well as we are on the East Coast, because we're used to playing to big crowds in Los Angeles, but we haven't really explored the East Coast very much before now.
I'm a little surprised you said that some people were slam dancing. You don't seem to be that
I
kind
haven't
of band.
seen. No, we're not. No one's ever done that to us. But I like it. You know, I love it if people dance and express themselves in whatever way is comfortable for them. It all helps add to the atmosphere and what we're trying to do. The hardest thing to do is to create an atmosphere when people are just sitting looking at you.
Think, oh, there's the band.
Yeah,
Aren't
yeah.
they nice? What would you say would be is there say a usual crowd reaction? Is there say maybe in California, which is where you guys usually are?
Well, yes, a lot of people come up to us after shows. In fact, after virtually every show, start asking questions on philosophy with us, which I'm sure isn't normal for most groups. I've never sort of.
No, I don't think it is.
But virtually every show, which is really encouraging. Not that I particularly want to talk philosophy after I've performed, but it's encouraging that people are picking up on the spiritual aspect of the group just from seeing us live. And I know when you see bands in live situations, you often can't tell exactly what the singer's saying because of sound problems and things get distorted, but they get enough of the general gist of what I'm saying to pick up on it very strongly, which is really gratifying. And a lot of our audience is very young. They're the ones that seem to be most interested in what we have to say, which I find very encouraging.
That's great. Okay, I think that more or less wraps things up. Let's not forget one thing. We do have 5 pair of tickets to give away for this show that's
Ooh.
going on tonight. Ooh. And once again, it's at Woody's, which is on East 4th Street by 2nd Avenue, I believe.
I
Yeah,
think
is that
so.
right?
Yes.
Yep, that's where it is. And we'll take callers 1 to 5, 212-998-1818 for that. That's callers number 1 through 5 for Red Temple Spirits at Woody's tonight.
Right.
And we're going to go out with a song called Meltdown. Is there anything you want to say about that?
About the song Meltdown. Well, that was basically inspired by living under perpetual fear of an earthquake in California, which we all do, which gives it an edge. That's pretty much where that song comes from.
Okay.
I would just like to add that the show starts at 9 o'clock
9
tonight,
o'clock,
so
yeah.
if you were planning on coming at 11, you would have missed us.
You'll be a little late. Missed the boat. Okay, thanks a lot for
Well,
coming
thank you
down.
very much, too.
And this is Red Temple Spirits from If I Were Leaving for Lhasa Tomorrow, I Wouldn't Stay a Minute More, Meltdown on the New Afternoon Show.